Welcome to Empowered Ease, the podcast where we challenge the patriarchy by inspiring women to take ownership of their health, mind, body, and soul. My name is Jen Olinger. I'm your host. I'm a holistic coach, a critical care nurse, and founder of the Moonflower Collective. Each episode, you'll hear from incredible women, healers, health practitioners, coaches, nurses, and pioneers making a difference. Together, we'll delve into their personal stories, the inspiration behind their work, and how women heal and thrive in community. Discover how by uniting our strengths and sharing our journeys, we transform not only ourselves, but the future of health and wellness. So tune in, be inspired, and empower yourself alongside our vibrant community of women. This is Empowered Ease. Let's embark on this journey of communal healing together. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Empowered Ease, where we celebrate inspiring women who are making a significant impact in the lives of others. Today, I'm thrilled to announce Mandy Ryle as our next guest. She's an extraordinary individual who is transforming how we approach and manage persistent pain. Mandy's innovative and holistic program is a lifeline for individuals, particularly women in midlife grappling with chronic pain. Her approach is a harmonious blend of nervous system re-education, mindset cultivation, nutrition coaching, and exercise. Mandy's expertise doesn't just stem from her comprehensive understanding of pain neuroscience and her professional credentials as a yoga teacher and strength and conditioning coach, but it's also deeply personal. Living with a chronic pain condition herself, Mandy's journey infuses her work with compassion and authenticity, offering her clients not just relief, but empowerment and renewed vitality. Beyond her transformative consulting, Mandy offers a wealth of resources, including the Move Beyond Pain Roadmap ebook and her popular YouTube channel, Movement for Healing. As the host of the Yin Yoga podcast, she continues to share holistic approaches to wellness with a broad audience. So join us as Mandy shares insights into her unique methods, ongoing projects, and how she envisions a world where pain is managed not just physically, but holistically, leading to a more vibrant and fulfilling life. Welcome, Mandy, to Empowered Ease. Hello, and welcome back to Empowered Ease. Our guest today is Mandy Ryle. Hello, Mandy. Welcome. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you for having me, Jen. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for coming. So you are kind of specializing in chronic pain. So before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your journey that got you to this point?
Well, I would say my journey started with yoga, which started with me being a single mom of a 1 and 3-year-old in my late 20s. And at the time, I was a professional musician, but I was really interested in some of the ways that yoga practices could help my students because I was a voice teacher. And so I really got into yoga, which was great because when my kids were napping, I would put on a video and it just kind of saved me. It helped me with my anxiety. It helped me to feel empowered. Um, so I got into yoga actually more than I was into music. I ended up doing a teacher training, started teaching. In 2010, I opened a studio. And it was rough. It's hard. Owning a yoga studio is really hard. I was in like a pretty horrible relationship at that point and raising two little kids and developed a chronic pain issue around 2015. Which was pretty life-changing, as I'm sure anyone will tell you who has had a chronic pain issue. And you tell yourself that you're not going to let it keep you down. You're not going to let it change you or shrink you. But despite all of your best efforts, that's exactly what it does. So spent many, many thousands of dollars, hours on all kinds of different strategies and treatments for this chronic pain issue, and it just got worse and worse and worse. In 2020, I ended up doing an advanced teacher training with a teacher called Jules Mitchell, and she is really heavily into the biomechanics of yoga, but also pain science. And so that was really my first introduction to pain science. It was like finding my soulmate, right? It's this combination of neuroscience, understanding biopsychosocial factors contributing to pain, understanding the holistic nature of pain, and therefore how yoga and other lifestyle factors can contribute to feeling better, which I employed and had a pretty haphazard approach for quite some time. Eventually, I ended up doing a pain science mentorship with my mentor who's in Canada, Neil Pearson. And that was really when I developed the strategies that I needed to get relief. And I can happily say that even though I am someone who still has a chronic pain issue, anyone who has chronic pain will always have chronic pain. Has not shrunk my life. I live pretty freely. I live without fear. Yes, I experience pain intermittently. I have flares just like anybody who's had a pain issue. But I can honestly say that I've overcome my pain issue. And so, combined with what I learned in my mentorship and my education and my own experience, I now help people to employ those exact same practices in a customized way so that they can feel better too. Because there's a lot you can do.
Ah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, so I have some questions that maybe you could just like break down a little bit for us. So, I this is maybe my first time really hearing about like pain science, which makes me really excited, and I
Oh,
love all
cool.
what you and what it involves, all the things I love. But can you explain, well, or maybe just break that down a little bit for those of us that are maybe a little bit newer, like what are some of the factors involved in like what are some of the biosocial factors involved in pain and what yeah, explain that a little bit more for
Yeah,
people who may be new to that idea or maybe what some of the neuroscience or yeah,
sure. I'd love
you're the
to.
expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, it's a huge topic, but let me see if
Yeah.
I can give just kind of a primer so you have a sense of what pain neuroscience education is. So, we acknowledge, at least, maybe in the last 40 or 50 years, that at least in the scientific community, not in the medical community, certainly, and definitely not in the general public, that the pain experience is a result of biopsychosocial factors. Most people still think that the reason that they experience pain is because they have some sort of tissue damage.
Hmm.
And when I say things like, actually, your pain has less to do with tissue damage than you think, that tissue damage and pain are only very loosely correlated, people think that's crazy, right? If I have a disordered joint, if I have osteoarthritis in my knee, then I'm gonna have pain,
Is it
right?
the inflammation? Is that what the pain
So
is?
that is still a biological factor, right?
Okay.
Inflammation is still biological, but we have other factors too. So, like, I am 48 years old. Um, if I look at like statistics, which look at asymptomatic people in my age range between 40 and 50, what we'll see is that about 40 to 50% of us, I always use this age range because it's such a nice, neat number. 40, 50 to 50% of us actually have osteoarthritic changes in our knee joints. I will remind you that these are asymptomatic people. These are people who do not have knee pain or any kind of functional deficits in their knees. But when we scan them, when we give them an MRI, we find that 40 to 50% of them have these changes. So I'll come back to what I said before, which is that tissue damage and pain are only loosely correlated. What are the factors that would lead to one person having pain as a result of these joint changes and one person being totally unencumbered? Those would have to be psychosocial factors, right?
Yeah.
Following me so far?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm loving this,
Yeah,
by the way. I'm
yeah.
learning, and you're very good at explaining this and breaking it down. So thank you.
That's what I do all day, every day.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Explain this stuff. Right. But it's hard to accept because all of us
Yeah.
grew up, right, with this. We have a very mechanistic view
That really challenges the narrative that everyone has believed probably forever. So,
forever.
yeah.
Forever. I mean, the current paradigm and understanding of the human body was actually developed around the same time as the Industrial Revolution, believe it or not. So at the
Mm.
same time as we were starting to, medicine was starting to become actual medicine as we know it, we were also developing systems and tools for mechanizing industry, right? For building cars and doing all sorts of crazy things, right? So
Hmm.
these two ideas sort of grew up in tandem, this mechanistic view of the body. I remember when I was in elementary school, we had like it was a page in a book, or maybe it was on the overhead projector that they used to use way back then, right? Maybe they still use them. Um, a diagram of the body, but instead of organs, it was machine parts. And it was explained to us that, okay, so your body is like an engine. It's like,
Hmm.
and when parts of it break, then you're screwed. It's just like an engine, right? So my clients have this same mechanistic view of their body. They think, oh, if my knee joint wears out, I just have to get it replaced. My
Oh,
shoulder
yeah,
joint
that's how
wears
they
out.
explain that parts of the body. Like your cardiac system is explained as like a plumbing system.
It's like a plumbing system, right?
So
So,
we
so
mechanize all of that. That's so true.
believe it or not, like this system was conceptualized in tandem with the Industrial Revolution.
I
Just
believe it.
you do believe it. And just because we think it's true, that doesn't mean it's true, right? There's
Yeah.
a lot of things that we think are true, which are absolutely false about our bodies, especially,
Yeah, you're right
right?
about
Which
that.
is why
Yeah.
this kind of education is so important. But the problem with this mechanistic view is that a machine part really does wear out. When a part in your car wears out, it's done. You have to replace it or fix it, right? The human body, however, adapts. Like we are biological entities. The dharma of a biological entity is to adapt to stressors. So your heart just doesn't like pump enough times, and that's as many as you get,
Yeah.
right? You're done pumping your heart. That couldn't be less true. The more you pump your heart, the more you work your heart, the better it adapts, the stronger it gets, the more resilient it gets. So it's the same thing with your knee. People think, oh, I have wear and tear in my knee. If you use your knee too much, you run too much or whatever, you're going to wear out that joint. You're going to need to get it replaced at some point. Except that's not true. It's just not true. Runners have less osteoarthritis. Runners have less knee pain than the general public, and certainly less than sedentary individuals. So, if this mechanistic view was true, then the people who do absolutely nothing, couch potatoes, would have healthier knees than marathon runners.
Yeah, we need to use you don't, what's the saying I tell people all the time? If you don't
Use it
use
or
it, you
lose it.
lose it at a certain age. And that is very true.
You do, right? Because the body is adapting both to stressors which are not applied in the case of the couch potato, right? So now we'll see degenerative changes just because the cells are never adapting, right? Or you can see adaptation to applied stress, the eustress, right? Not too much,
Mhm.
not too little. That's the sweet spot. It happens to your heart. It happens to your knees. It happens to your shoulders. It happens to your back. It happens to your connective tissues, your bones, your muscles, your brain, right? All of your systems are adapting all the time. And so this mechanistic view is super harmful, especially for us women as we enter midlife. You're not there yet. You're too young, but
Oh,
as
I'm 41. I'm there.
oh, you're getting there. Okay, well, you look
Yeah.
really young.
Well,
Okay.
thank you. I appreciate it. I like credit it to being immature.
Yeah. Maybe
Just
I should
kidding.
try a little bit more of that.
Just kidding.
So, but we think, oh, well, the reason I'm in pain is because my joints are wearing out. I'm just getting older. This is not true. We don't just start to experience pain because we're getting older. We start to experience pain due to a lot of other biopsychosocial factors, including probably not being active enough. And I would love
Hmm.
to talk about, especially, those factors for women in midlife, because that is predominantly the population that I serve. But I want
Hmm.
to give you a chance to kind of like break that up if you need to. I know I just talked a bunch for a while.
No, I loved it. I thought it was so great. And I think now where I kind of want to go with this because so I was beautifully broken down, is kind of what some of those factors can be, or that you see quite often. Because, I can tell you as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about a few different things. I'm thinking about one, sometimes the way, like as a critical care nurse, the way pain is relieved is um, it's different for everyone, and sometimes it's distraction, and sometimes it's, what I mean, like so it's not always related to like relieving the physical symptoms for pain relief. So I'm thinking of that, but I'm also thinking of like my chronic pain people are people who stuff their emotions. They're people who haven't maybe had a lot of ability or situations to be able to express themselves freely. There's a lot of common um factors I see involved that are common for a lot of women, and we're the brunt of this population with chronic pain, with chronic
Yeah.
illnesses, with all of that. So I'm just wondering your perspective on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's true. So women experience chronic pain more than men. The women in midlife experience chronic pain more than other women. So women
Is
in
that
different
now?
ages.
Sorry to interrupt. I want to add one part is any of this related to our like hormone changes in this
This
stage of
is
life too?
there is a component of the hormone changes. So estrogen is a pain modulator. Estrogen works with the other neurochemicals, which can either turn down or amplify pain. So estrogen is known to have a little bit of a turning down capacity in our system. So when we have
Mhm.
less estrogen and, even progesterone, right? Progesterone sort of keeps us calm. When we get ramped up, those pain chemicals also are increased. Um, Also, estrogen helps to protects our bones, protects our joints, right? So we often see that women are experiencing more joint changes, joint pain, especially is one of the primary complaints of perimenopause. And some of this is biological, right? Those are biological factors. The other factor
Mhm.
that you brought up previously was inflammation. I think that a lot of us women are experiencing neuroinflammatory, neuroimmune inflammation issues, gut issues
Mhm.
at this age. Obviously, autoimmune disorders tend to accelerate as we get to this age range. So, those are all biological factors. However, inflammation is also modulated by emotional stress. Emotional stress is probably one of the primary drivers of
Mhm.
inflammation for most of us. And by the way, it's modifiable. Emotional stress, right? Nutrition, how which we move. Those are the main things that we can do to modulate inflammation in our bodies. But I also wanted to touch on something else you said is that uh, those of us, and I'm including myself here, right? I know this very, very well. I live this. Those of us with chronic pain do have a bit of a type, a personality type. We tend to be people pleasers. We tend to be highly, highly conscientious individuals. We tend to be perfectionists. We're
Mhm.
very, very hard on ourselves.
Yes.
We do know that early life trauma significantly increases the chances that we'll experience chronic pain in our lifetime. So there are personality factors which can increase not only the likelihood that we will develop a chronic pain issue, but make it a lot harder for us to overcome it. And then, so that's kind of sort of one of the sort of psychological factors, but let me just touch a little bit on the social factors. And that's something you just brought up. I mean, I already mentioned I'm 48 years old, right? So uh, like many of women my age, are in this sandwich generation, right? We've got our kids who are just leaving home and they have their unique sets of challenges. And we have these relationship challenges and dynamics that we're trying to navigate at a really transitional point in life. I became an empty nester last year myself. It's fabulous. I highly recommend it. Um, but also we've got our parents,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Now we're dealing with the stresses of our parents. So that causes a significant amount of stress that we can't really do a lot about. Most of us, at this age range, are in relationships, especially heterosexual, only heterosexual women are in relationships with men who were raised in the 80s.
I just rolled my eyes so hard it hurt.
Or, previous generations, like they were even more disadvantaged, right? So,
Uh-huh.
like, we're feeling sort of like overloaded in the home. We're feeling like our voices often being silenced, right? Because a lot of these relationships, I know, especially I am currently going through a divorce, right? Like, we don't have a voice, right? And so then this just continues to exacerbate this feeling that we are powerless.
Oh,
And
and it's cultural too, with like the whole just the patriarchy in general. It's kind of ingrained in our culture from for a very, very long time to take women's voice away too.
to take our voice away. And then, like, you're only being a good woman if you are subjugating your needs in favor of everyone else in your life. And how does this show up for my clients? I mean, it shows up in that, oh, I can't exercise. I have to take the kids to practice. Or, my husband is always traveling, so I can't do this with because I have the kids or I have my parents or whatever. So I can't exercise. I'm inactive. Inactivity is highly correlated with the development of chronic pain, as well as increased inflammation, as well as poor outcomes in aging, right? So it's no wonder that we're experiencing all of these like a tsunami. And this is just when it comes to not moving enough. What about diet? I don't have time to take care of my diet. I can't go to the grocery store and meal prep or XYZ.
Yeah.
So, and these are just like the physical factors,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I feel like our needs are changing a little bit dietary at this point in our age too, that we're probably lacking in as well, just from the understudied of what this does to our bodies. Like this perimenopause stage hasn't been studied very well, and we're finding a
No.
lot of things going on that can help, so it's kind of crazy. I love this though, because I think there's so many more women living with this stuff than we even know about. Because of that, we push our stuff under the rug. We're people please there. Well, and especially for people that are, because I think a lot of women have a touch of this and it's a spectrum. And then I love how you're saying there's like a personality type to it, because as you're describing some of those traits, I'm envisioning my clients with, I'm like, oh, you know what? Yeah, she would fit in that mold a little bit, thinking about that. So I think I just can't imagine how empowering this is for some women to hear, that like, hey, so if a woman is listening to this and she's like, okay, you're hitting that. That's me. That's me. What kind of advice would you give them, or where would you direct them, or what do they need to know at this point?
Wow, it's such a journey, right? It's such a journey. And I know this from my own personal experience because I'm like a go-getter, a very motivated person. Nobody needs to ask me to, I am on it. So when I sort of started learning about pain neuroscience, and then I just was so hungry. I was constantly reading research. I was reading books and getting more language and ideas about this, and I was excited to apply them to my own pain issue. It at times made it worse. Oh, I was barking up the wrong tree with that. Let me try this strategy. Let me try that strategy, right? So a lot of times we're really discouraged because we tried to get to the gym, right? We felt like we got re-injured. We tried to change our diet, except it was just really, really hard. So we gave up. So having somebody to stand by your side and hold your hand, right? And not only figure out like what strategies are going to work specifically in your life, but also what are sustainable for you? What are things that you can do on a regular basis that are also really, really effective? And when we discover something that isn't working, can we pivot before we waste too much more time and more pain, right? So it's difficult. This is um, a difficult thing to manage on your own. I will say that, right? I'm not going to blow smoke and say, oh, you got this, right? However, there are lots of resources. I have lots of resources for people who want a holistic perspective on their pain and holistic strategies for their pain. So, one of the things I would recommend is my ebook, just because it gives you a roadmap. It's literally a roadmap to starting to get moving with chronic pain, which, as a 20-year movement professional, is probably the number one thing. Because what is it that pain usually keeps us from doing? Moving, right? We stop doing Exercise, certainly, right? And then maybe you stop taking care of your yard. That's too much. All that bending over is difficult for me. Okay, that's another thing I've eliminated from my life. I have clients who stop socializing because sitting in the chair or, getting to here or there, the friends and family want to go to this event and I can't swim and I can't walk to the park, right? So now the lack of movement is also impacting your social life. And we know that loneliness and social isolation increase pain and also other illness. And then what about, okay, well, driving has become really difficult for me. I have clients who can't drive anymore because of their pain. So it becomes even more isolating, even more debilitating. So movement is the number one thing that we have to reclaim. Without the ability to move, we're missing out on all of these other important things that can actually turn down your pain, even in the presence of tissue damage. Even in the presence of tissue damage. So that roadmap to moving beyond pain, I think is a really, really great resource. I think also having a supportive community of peers can be really helpful, especially for us women. I know that a lot of us are really feeling marginalized and misunderstood at this stage in our lives. It's very bewildering, a lot of the changes that we're experiencing. So having peers that you can look to for advice, but also just support or even sometimes commiseration can be really, really helpful. So, yeah, a coach, movement, a community, nutrition is really important. Developing personal resources, all of it. That's why it's holistic. It's all the things. That's what I would say.
Powerful, powerful stuff. So as you were talking, I was wondering so I love the movement piece, but how do you, so one thing I'm hearing a lot too from a lot of other people that come on and, I think is really important for women of our age is to allow ourselves to rest when our bodies are telling us to rest too. So I'm wondering well, I think the rest is also essential to keep moving sometimes. So I'm just wondering, how you help women find balance or, maybe yeah with the rest versus the movement at this age, like allowing ourselves time, because I feel like part of that, like people pleasing and being like a really good self motivator, is sometimes that's you almost can wear yourself out at
Yeah.
times too, trying to, and they're not, maybe they're not physical things, you know what I mean, we're wearing ourselves out in other ways trying to get it all done and make everybody happy. So how do you find that balance?
That is really hard because uh, pushing through pain is probably the number one strategy for my clients, just pushing through. But we know that when we're consistently ignoring our pain and pushing through it, it tends to get worse. It doesn't get better, right? So for a lot of my clients, they actually need to engage in some sort of programming, some sort of
Mm-hmm.
fitness, right? Or strength or movement. I do somatics a lot with people, which is a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
way of moving that is really restful, which
Mm-hmm.
encourages us to start to listen to our bodies. So for me, the first step for almost every client is interoceptive awareness, is starting to develop that internal sense of number one, what am I feeling? What am I
Mm-hmm.
experiencing? Instead of ignoring it, because that's what we do. We ignore our feelings. Having feelings is a huge liability for a woman. We,
Right.
we can't put up with
Yeah, don't
nearly
be
all this stuff,
difficult and bring that stuff up. Jeez.
right? It's just better not to have feelings. It's so much easier for everyone.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So for most people, it's learning that to actually pay attention to your body again. And the best way for me to do that is through somatic education, learning how it moves to feel your shoulder joint in this range of motion, and then learning how do I feel about how it feels.
I
Right.
love that. I love that because it's so somatics is so like nervous system calming as well, which is I think a big vital piece of this, is most of our nervous systems are in like this over overly stimulated state a
Stimulated.
lot. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, there's no one prescription for when to rest. What we have to do first is get in touch with how we're actually feeling so that we can make an informed decision about it,
Yeah. Well, I
right?
also want to go back to what you said about community too, because it is not a small thing. I think that's a huge piece of a lot of women's struggles. And like one of the points of this podcast, and something that comes up constantly is like, you know, women really need a community to heal that can not just hear them, but understand. You need someone who can validate you a little bit, who, like if I bring my nursing stresses home to my family members or friends who aren't nurses, it's not as validating to share with them because they don't really understand. However, if I go and I commiserate with another ICU nurse who knows what my stress is about, it feels more relieving. So I feel like, and this is true of trauma, this is true of grief. These are very powerful times that we really need other people who have gone through something similar enough to understand. We need to hear them tell their stories. We need to be in a safe place with them to be able to tell our own. And it's powerful on so many levels because I think that experience allows us to see other women fighting through things, that allows us to see other women letting themselves rest. And in hearing those stories, we validate those things for ourselves that maybe
Yeah.
as people pleasers, as perfectionists, we're just pushing that under the rug a little bit. Oh, that's fine. That's not really me. And then when you hear another person say it, you're like, oh, maybe that is affecting me. Maybe I should let that out of my little wherever I shoved it for a minute and look at it a little
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. I That is an interesting point you make, right? That it's more validating to share your experience with someone who's had a common experience. And I think that is really especially true for people with pain and us women, especially because having pain is really inconvenient for everyone else in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we get used to sort of minimizing it. Like I know when I'm in a flare, I don't tell anyone I'm in a flare. I mean, it could be 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 flare for me, and nobody's going to hear about it. There's a little bit of shame in it, right? How did I
Yeah.
get back here again? I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
But when we have a group of peers who also have pain, especially other women, it is especially validating and supportive. You know, we know that we just mentioned this, women experience chronic pain more than men, and women in midlife experience it more than other women. We also know that when we go to our doctors or medical professionals for help with our pain, we are most likely to walk out of the visit with a prescription for an antidepressant. And I don't want to dog on this too much, right? We do know that some antidepressants can have a beneficial effect on chronic pain, right? So there is a good clinical reason for that, but also it's tremendously unvalidating to be
Mm-hmm.
told, "Oh, you have shoulder pain? Let's just work on your anxiety. Can you do some breathing exercises? Maybe try to relax more, try a bubble bath," right? That's crushing.
Mm-hmm.
It's crushing. Or even worse, like, well, when you lose 25 pounds, come back and talk to me about your
Oh,
shoulder, right?
yeah.
So yeah, we need other people who are going through these experiences to validate us so that we know that we're
Yes.
not crazy. Because feeling like you're crazy and feeling like you have no power and feeling like no one understands you is really, really amplifying for pain sensitivity. This is known. This is science, right? So
Yeah.
just feeling understood can actually turn down our sensitivity.
Oh, I love that. That's such a key thing. And I knock on the medical system a lot because I'm in it, but I'll say one thing I think that is lacking is the education about preventing or like really healing things. We do really just treat symptoms. And I feel like that's getting worse and worse. But then when we talk about something like this that maybe isn't that well studied or maybe is like a new, I don't know, I wouldn't even say it's new. It's just not really been accepted by the modern medical system. And it's starting to we're starting to in our culture really accept this, well, parts of us are starting to really accept that this stuff is real. These holistic practices are really healing people, it's just not something you're going to find in your doctor's office unless you're seeking out someone who's like more into functional medicine or,
Yeah.
into the more holistic practices. So, I just want to encourage people to look around for maybe some things outside that system, not to replace, but to supplement
Yes.
your care. Because this, and again, I'm not saying avoid the medical system. I'm saying there are a lot of supplemental, holistic, functional practices out there that help. And this is one of those areas that like people are going back, the way well, maybe you can speak to this because how we treat chronic pain in the medical system when you go to the doctor, I know you said antidepressants, but past that as well, what are the other treatments, like,
Yeah. It's really, I have over the years I've had as clients many physicians. Um, and when I'm out in the world and I'm chatting with physicians and I tell them what I do, they're always like, "Oh, thank God someone is doing that." Because honestly, like first of all, physicians don't really love chronic pain,
yeah.
right? They don't have a lot of options for chronic pain, and they'll be the first to admit it. I can give you a medication or I can do a procedure, right? The problem is pain is not biological only, it is biopsychosocial, right? So how often do we do that procedure and yet the person is in just as much pain or more post procedure, right? It's because there are other factors contributing to pain. The other part of that, which is, I think, really harmful, and this comes back to the paradigm of how we understand the body. And this is really unique to Western medicine, which is unique to Western philosophy, right? So, like to compare, we could look at the Eastern philosophies like Ayurveda or Chinese traditional medicine, right? Those philosophies consider patterns, right? So you go to an acupuncturist and they're going to talk about your diet and talk about your sleep and your relationships and they're going to look at your tongue and your blood pressure and your eyes and your hair, right? They're going to look at this whole pattern, this whole constellation of self, and they're going to try to come up with, hopefully, although again, we might have some sequestering of treatments also, like for example, in acupuncture or herbalism, right? So the constellation of factors is considered when we have some sort of malady, right? In Western philosophy, and i.e., Western medicine, we look for an origin, not a constellation of factors, not a pattern. We need to find that one thing, that
Mhm.
one joint, that one muscle, that one cell, that one XYZ that's causing all of this.
Mhm.
We need an origin, right? And this is unique to Western philosophy, right? And it has a lot to do also with our Judeo-Christian philosophy as well, the origin, right? We got this one guy. So the problem with looking for an origin is that we miss 99% of what's going on in the
Yeah.
self. So I always tell my clients, pain doesn't happen in a body part, it happens in a unified self, which means that we can tug on this string or this string or this string or this string. Any string we pull on is going to make an impact on your pain. We just need to find the ones that are going to sustainably work in your life.
Hmm. Yeah, that holistic, patient-centered approach is where it's at. It's where it's at for a lot of things, unless acute conditions. But for the most part, anything preventative, any of that, it's all about like this big picture, like what all the factors in your life, lifestyle,
Yes.
genetics, all of it.
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
that because that's
Yeah.
where it's at, where the real healing's at.
And it's not that we can't do these things in tandem with medicine, right? I mean, most of my clients are also seeing a physician. Maybe they're also seeing a physical therapist. Maybe they're doing different kinds of treatments or getting regular checkups with their surgeon for their pain issues, right? These things are not mutually exclusive. They can
Hmm.
work together, right? Um,
But sometimes they don't need them more as much medical when they start working.
I mean, I have to my clients, I have zero opinion on what they're doing with their doctor because that's not my role. I will
Yeah.
say that most of them find over time that they need to spend less time at the chiropractor and they need to do less, like tests and stuff with their doctor because they're feeling better.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful. Well, man, I have really appreciated this. I feel like you are very, very articulate at communicating these ideas, and I appreciate it. I feel like my listeners will appreciate it too. Um, so what if someone is listening to this and they're like, man, I want to talk to you, I want to work with Mandy. Where would you send them first?
So yeah, I know you'll have a link for the ebook.
Yeah, all of Mandy's links will be in the show notes. There's a bunch, so.
Yeah, you'll have a link for the ebook. That's going to be probably the best way to sort of enter my ecosystem because I have a lot that I can offer once you're in the ecosystem. So once you request that ebook, you'll get a link for it, but also you'll be on my email list. So I can tell you about all of the other cool things I'm doing. Another option would be to just look at my YouTube channel, Movement for Healing. I have lots and lots of movement resources on there. I do a webinar once every few months, which is pain specific. The last one that I did was about the role of fear in chronic pain. The one before that was specifically travel tips for people
Ooh, I
with
love
chronic pain. So we're
these.
always doing cool stuff. The next one is actually specifically about the menopause and perimenopause experience in chronic pain.
Oh, powerful right now.
Yeah, and that one's coming up in I think at the end of August. So if you request that ebook, then you'll get on that list and I'll tell you when I have cool resources coming up, all of which are free. Um, if you're like, okay, I think this is for me, I really need to talk to her individually about my specific pain problem. I think I've also provided you a link to schedule a 25-minute free call with me so we can discuss if working together would be a good idea for you, if I can help you. I also run group programs, which I sort of love the most because it adds that community
Mhm.
aspect. So the next group program is specifically regarding women in the perimenopause experience and chronic pain. So yeah, that's all my
Love that.
resources. And just
I
reach out.
love that. I'm so excited. I'm gonna, after this, I'm gonna talk to you about some of the other nonprofits I work with around this. I feel like there's just so many people out there that if they just need to know you exist. You know what I mean?
I
So I always ask
agree.
all,
So thank you for having me on so I can talk to people because I don't think people know how many options they have.
oh,
They
agree,
don't
agreed.
know how much power they have.
Yeah,
And maybe is it going to eliminate your pain 100%? No. There's no treatment that's going to eliminate it 100%. But I know in the worst days of my pain experience, I would have taken a 15 or 20% improvement.
right.
And
Anything to help you.
yeah, and
Yeah.
certainly we can do much, much better than that. So
Right. Oh, I love that. So one thing I ask all my guests, I want to ask you before I go is, so what is your go-to, my gosh, I don't want to butcher it. I always say, used to say self-care, but now I say oh my gosh. Dr. Lori Law corrected me and she told me to call it. Oh man, I'm gonna have to look it up for the next one. Anyway, she's like, don't say self-care anymore. Say self, and now I can't remember it. So sorry,
hmm.
Dr. Lori Laws. I will find out. I will look it up. I'm blanking today because I'm tired. But what's your go-to self-care when things are getting overwhelming, the way that you bring you back to you?
It's for me, I am in love with heavy resistance training.
Ooh,
And that's something that I think a lot of women avoid. Obviously, we know that, but especially women with chronic pain. And I used to too. But what I discovered when I started strength training, heavy resistance training about 4 years ago, was that it actually helps my pain issue. I'm in significantly less pain, having a regular strength training regimen. I work out in the gym 5 days a week. I do cardio every day. And for me, it's what makes me feel empowered. It's what makes me feel like myself. It helps to regulate my nervous system. It helps to turn down the sensitivity on my pain. It's everything. It's everything.
I
So
love that. That's
that's
a
my
new
self.
one too. Like that's not one someone said before. So I think how powerful and how related to your message. So, well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge. Like I really appreciate it. I feel like this is one of those those topics that just needs more light, needs more attention for people to know what's out there and that they don't have to accept the way things are right now. They do have options. There's changes possible. So I think this is so powerful. Thank you so much.
That was very well said. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for tuning in today to this episode of Empowered Ease. I hope you found inspiration and insight in today's conversation. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing or sharing the episode with someone you know who needs to hear an empowering story or would benefit from the empowering stories. You can also buy us a cup of coffee on our website, which goes a long way in editing the show and finding guests. For those of you that are looking for a little more and some support in reclaiming your energy and your joy, I invite you to explore my program called From Burnout to Blossoming, Reclaim Your Energy and Joy. It's a transformative journey that I walk you step by step through to help you rejuvenate and embrace your full potential and re engage in the joy of life. So you can always visit my website, www.themoonflowercoachingcollective.com, and to learn more and sign up. And don't forget to join our vibrant community by subscribing to my newsletter. You'll gain access to a free supportive community and network of women tackling burnout. We regularly post and have conversations inside our private group. It's totally free. You'll also receive updates on the 2 free monthly workshops I do each month. I'm starting a chakra series currently, and we would love for you to join. Also, it'll help you stay in the loop with all the empowering initiatives that I'm doing at the Moonflower Collective and all the guests on the show, Empowered Ease. So, together we can nurture a space where women thrive. I hope you'll join us there. Until next time, continue to empower yourself and each other, and take care of yourselves, ladies.